Quick after-action report from a scenario that I just completed out of Skirmisher, issue number 4, which is the MMP magazine about great campaigns in the American Civil War. If you watch my videos at the end of last year, beginning of this year, about resolutions that I wanted to accomplish in 2025, one of them was playing more great campaigns in the American Civil War. I have, up to this point, we're at the very end of April, so in 4 months, I have played a ton of GCACW. I have played a bunch of scenarios out of Thunder on the Mississippi. I played the full Thunder on the Mississippi campaign back in February. I did some video coverage of that from Game On Con. You can go check that out. Had a blast with that. After that, I wanted to get more GCACW under my belt, so I did the Antietam campaign from Rose to Gettysburg 2 at the local club. That was a fun one. I played the Union. I didn't manage to win, but we did all... I think it was 9. How many turns would that have been? I think it was 17 turns, that one. And today we just concluded the Mine Run campaign. This is an expansion scenario from Skirmisher number 4, which is a fantastic magazine. This issue came out, I believe, last year at some point, or possibly maybe at the very end of 2023. I think it was 2024. And this contains a whole bunch of material for great campaigns of the American Civil War for games that already exist. So, first of all, it comes with a bonus scenario for Stonewall Jackson's Way 2 called Battle for the Gaps, which is a primarily cavalry scenario. Pretty small unit count. It's 5 turns. Haven't played that one. Do definitely want to do that, though. But the bigger prize here is Lee's Last Offensive, which is 2 campaign scenarios, complete with advanced rules, using these Stonewall Jackson's Way 2 maps. We have got To Gain a Victory. This is it's in a bunch of scenarios. So we've got, I think, 4 basic scenarios in here that cover kind of all of these. 4 basic scenarios. No Place in History. That one's a 5-turn. Various sizes. Then we get to the advanced game rules. Actually, very few advanced game rules for these campaigns. Only about 3 pages, and most of those 3 pages are taken up by detaching units and reattaching units. So not very complicated at all. Now, I wanted to get this played with a friend of mine who has never played great campaigns in the American Civil War, and I think this is a really great place to start because of the low special rules, the low unit density, and the sort of interesting nature of these campaigns. So we get 2 campaign scenarios. We have the Deep Game, which is a 14-turn campaign that uses both of Stonewall Jackson's Way 2 maps. This is 1863 Meade versus Lee. We didn't play this one because it was a little long, but we did do the Mine Run campaign, which is at the very end of 1863. Again, Lee and Meade, and it uses the Stonewall Jackson's Way South map. So this is that map here, and this is the finishing position of our Mine Run campaign. It was a really great time. I just, I can't get enough of this system. Every time I play it, I want to play more, and that is why I had 2 concurrent games running with Antietam and Mine Run. I've been playing the Union mostly this year, but for this scenario, I decided to take the Confederates, partially because the way the scenario starts, so we've got the Rapidan River right here, kind of bisecting the southern part of the map. The Confederates start in these redoubt and entrenched positions along the river, and the Union starts north around in Madison County here, with their headquarters being at Culpeper, right there. And we'll explain what is going on up here when we get to the end of the after-action report. So the Union is stretched out, and they've got 3 corps, basically, and they've got a bunch of pontoon bridges built through the woods here, near the wilderness, along the Rapidan. The Confederates are locked in. They're not allowed to move until the Union comes across the river. So the Union is in an attacking posture in this scenario, and what the Union's trying to do is capture these 3 victory hexes, the 3 blue cubes. Every turn that the Union holds one of those hexes, they get 3 victory points. So there's a potential 9 victory points a turn available to them. You're also scoring points for casualty differential, as in most GCACW games. And then there are some bonus points if you can capture the opposing side's sort of headquarters location. For the Confederates, it's the Orange Courthouse, and for the Union, it is Culpeper. So essentially, the way that the early scenario works is that you've got kind of a small screening force over here by the Union, but a majority of their forces are going to want to come down across the river, set up for a really big turn, because the Confederates can't move until they cross, and then come down across the river and try and capture these 3 points and then hold on for as long as possible. And that is what my opponent did. He managed to come down here. He managed to grab this crossroads here, and then I think very shortly after grab this one. And before I could do anything about it, he managed to get another march down here and grab all 3. And I believe on the first couple turns, he scored all full points for them. What the Confederates then have to do is they have to, under all of these sort of fortified positions along the Rapidan, they have to detach units and try and push the Union back. There's also a force down here in the Orange Courthouse, and we've got Stuart's cavalry and so forth. And the way that our campaign ended up going was he came down here and made a pretty large grab of the victory points hexes. And meanwhile, my strategy is I wanted to pin down as many of the Union forces along the river as I possibly could by leaving behind garrisons. So you can see that we've got 4 strength points here. We've got a detachment here of 3 strength points, and essentially I detached all of the Union. I kept enough that he wouldn't be able to easily overrun me across these fords. So he had to respect that I could possibly send manpower this way. And I sent a lot of the Confederate power to the east, mostly under Lee. And who's under Lee? This is Lee and Early, Jubal Early here, down in this direction. And we also were supported by cavalry as well, although they started further west. And we ended up entering a stalemate. It's really tough to fight in the woods. You can't really get flanking bonuses with the way the road network is set up. So it was really hard. He managed to get in here and fortified very quickly. And he had a large cavalry force as well that was able to come down to this side. Now the Confederates, I decided then that I needed to change kind of the point of pressure on the Union. I couldn't just go toe-to-toe with him. They had a huge number of units. So I ended up taking Hill's 3rd Corps and leaving Orange Courthouse, made a march up this direction. When she had left pretty undefended. He had 1 corps, and I believe it was French. It was French's corps who had kind of moved down into this direction. So I moved Stuart's cavalry up and around this direction to approach Culpeper from sort of the west and the north. And I had Hill's corps march up this way. We had some skirmishing in here, so a couple small battles that I managed to get the better of him with, and then I managed to push up the road, and he had left Culpeper undefended. And so I managed to sweep him aside, and I managed to get, as you see, there's still a unit here at the end of the scenario, which was a huge deal. I managed to get Wilcox's division into Culpeper sort of halfway through the campaign. And then I managed to fortify it with some breastworks, and that ended up being a very significant turn of events. Because my cavalry had been able to come around this way and kind of skirmish with his cavalry and keep them from surrounding me, and I had managed to win the sort of infantry battle running up this railroad to Culpeper. He was not able to do anything about me getting in there. And then I detached Hill himself to come across this way most of his forces had already crossed the Rapidan, so there was really nothing back here. And I managed to detach Hill and get a couple really good march rolls, come down these roads, and I managed to blow up both of his pontoon bridges across the Rapidan in the east. That was huge victory points for me, and he left them undefended. So I was able to get in here with Hill sort of around the back of his line and destroy those. So each of those was 5 victory points. In the late stages of the campaign, we were kind of squabbling over these. I launched several assaults. I managed to take one of these back with Lee and Early. They managed to come down and managed to take this from him before he could really get entrenched in there. But then it became a real slog to take back where Sykes is here at what is that? That is Forest Grove. So Sykes ended up here at Forest Grove. I made several attempts with Lee and Early, and I just couldn't get it done. Unfortunately, my die rolling was kind of abandoned me. So he was scoring 6 points a turn, and that was kind of the best that we could do. We did have some more cavalry squabbling back in here. It was really nothing conclusive. And then eventually we had some fights over Orange Courthouse. So he ended up sending down part of, who is this? This would have been Webb. So this was one of his corps. He ended up slipping in behind me down this road, and we had a fight over Orange Courthouse. He managed to actually take it. That would have been a huge number of points for him at the end of the game, but I lucked out because one of the random events I rolled allowed Barton's brigade to come on the map right here, and then I surrounded him and got the initiative advantage with some cavalry, and I managed to drive him out of there basically within a turn. So while it did look that he was going to potentially win based on capturing my HQ, I managed to defend it successfully, and then we had a running battle down these roads. That's why you see these 2 stacks that are at fatigue 4. I ended up driving him back, and we exchanged casualties. Meanwhile, in Culpeper, Hill left behind Wilcox, and Wilcox did a hell of a job. He fortified the town. He put up some flanks for fuse. He took up a strong defensive position. He started with 9 guys in there, I think. And then the Union had to redirect a bunch of their manpower that they were using to kind of mass along the river, and had to come back here to try and dislodge him so they didn't lose 10 points at the end of the game. Unfortunately, over 3 or 4 separate assaults with Sedgwick and French and Meade trying to contribute a grand assault, which actually never went off as you would expect because Meade's a terrible overall commander in this game and potentially in history too. He was not able to dislodge me. He got really close a couple of times, but he couldn't get the retreat result that he needed to get me out of the town, and these breastworks really, really helped. And this is probably the first game of GCACW I've played where flanks refused has come into mean a huge amount. Because I was able to get flanks refused in there, even though he was surrounding me, I had a really strong defensive position, and he basically bled himself against Wilcox's defenses, leading to a 14-point victory swing with casualties for the Confederates, and that really sealed the deal at the end. After the final 2 turns, I think saw 3 assaults here from Meade and French and Sedgwick, and none of them worked. And so he just lost a lot of manpower trying to take it back, and it was a near-run thing, but this is a really good time. This campaign is quite interesting. You get a lot of attack and defense swapping back and forth. You know, the Union starts on the aggressive. They come down here. They're trying to take these key positions. And then, once they get entrenched in there, the Confederates have to figure out a way to mass enough force that they're able to try and strike back. And, there's a risk because you have so many approaches into the Confederate rear along these redoubts. They can't detach everything. They need to leave some forces behind to protect these crossings. Otherwise, the Union are going to have a good time of it. So it was a really interesting scenario. 9 turns long. There's a random events table here. The one that we used, I believe, was this one here. And we were fighting winter weather the whole time as well. It was very hard to attack in this scenario. We rolled winter weather as an event quite a lot, and that puts the attacker at a -1 on their die roll. So it explains why he wasn't able to take the town and why I wasn't able to take this victory point hex. But overall, it was a great scenario. Actually, I really enjoyed the dynamic of this one. I think if you have not played GCACW, I think if you have Stonewall Jackson's Way 2, because it requires the maps and a lot of the counters, if you have Skirmisher number 4, the Mine Run campaign is actually a really good intro scenario for GCACW for the advanced campaign game. Complete with the random events and the extended sequence of play. There's not too many extra rules for the campaign. It's short enough that you can play it pretty quickly. We did it in 2 sessions, and actually we probably could have finished it last turn if we had just a couple more hours, or last session if we had a couple more hours. And it provides a lot of really interesting situations, and you learn the mechanics without too much unit overhead. There's not a lot of density of units in this campaign. So I'm very pleased with the content in here. I'm finally glad that I got a chance to play it and sneak in a little small scenario of GCACW while I was playing some bigger stuff. So Mine Run campaign from Skirmisher 4, that's kind of the way it turned out. The final score, by the way, was, I believe it was a Confederate substantive victory by a single point. So I crossed the line on the final turn from minor victory to decisive victory there at the very end. And, I made a good show of it there. I think he got a little out of position with some of his units being exposed to my cavalry sort of towards the end of the scenario, but it was a real tight down to the wire thing. Even into the final turn, it was still winnable for the Union. So a really nicely balanced scenario as well, at least from 2 players who would say are not the best GCACW players. So if you haven't given GCACW a chance, this is my bi-monthly reminder that it is my favorite Hex and Counter war game system, and you should definitely play it.